So the hits just keep on coming from Ricardo, the developer of the VeraLux suite of scripts for Siril. This time he's given us a gradient removal tool called VeraLux Nox. This is not an AI tool, but it mathematically separates the light pollution from the signal within our image. The math that it uses doesn't rely on sample points like the built-in background extraction tool from Siril or City Astro's BGE script does, but instead it uses a deterministic physics-based engine that he has coined the Zenith Membrane engine. And what that engine does is it treats the background like an elastic surface. So background's kind of lower while the signal of the image itself would stay higher, stretch across the image, and using that type of a model within the algorithm is what's actually going to be removing the gradients for us. So it's a different way of removing the background gradients compared to some of the other tools that we have available to us in Siril. So let's check it out. My name is Rich and you're watching Deep Space Astro. Alright, so we want to start with installing the script. So scripts, get scripts. You can scroll through and look for the VeraLux Nox script in the list down here, or use your search bar and just type NOx. Make sure it's selected on the right hand side and then click apply. We are going to be working with my Rosette Nebula today, so I am going to open up my new stack and we'll go into an auto stretch view so we can see what we're working with. So before we get started, first of all, this script is best used on linear data, just like any of the other background extraction tools that we have within Siril. And second, the Nox script is now the fourth tool that we have within Siril that can do background extraction for us. So these are tools that can remove the background gradients that we see in our image from light pollution or any other light sources that are just washing in. You can see in this image from the top left down to the bottom right, it's brighter up in the top left corner and it's darkening as it's going through the image. The Nox script is not meant to be a replacement tool, it is just another tool to remove our background gradients. So I highly recommend that you try all four that we have right now and decide for yourself which one you like better, which one works for your data better, and go back and forth. You may find that one works well for a specific set of data, but maybe not so much for your next set of data, so you move to the next tool to remove those gradients for that data. So again, this is the fourth tool that we have. The other three are, first of all, Siril's built-in background extraction, which can be found under image processing and background extraction. The second and third tools are Python scripts that if you have them installed, you can find them under scripts, Python scripts, processing. So AutoBGE will remove background gradients, and Graxpert can remove your background gradients as well. So with that being said, the first thing that you want to do, regardless of the tool that you're going to use, is you want to make sure that you crop your image. We want to make sure we don't have any cropping artifacts around the edge of the image before running a background extraction. So we're just going to draw a selection. We're going to right click, select crop, and then crop. It's important that you do that before background extraction, because if you have any stacking artifacts around the edges, then any of these tools may determine that that's part of the image, whether it thinks that it's the background or it thinks that it's signal, and it can mess up the algorithms that these tools use to determine what is a gradient and what is signal in your image. Once you do your crop, then you're ready to do your background extraction. So we're going to come up into scripts, Python scripts, VeraLux, and VeraLux Nox. First thing I want to talk about is the preview window. This isn't a preview window in the sense that you may be used to, meaning as we're making changes, whether we use our auto calculate button or we adjust our sliders, and I'll talk about that in a minute, we're not going to see the effect that these settings have on our image in this preview window. This preview window exists strictly for doing manual masking, which we'll cover here in a minute, as well as viewing the gradient model once background extraction is complete. So don't expect to see changes in the preview window at all for this specific script. But we do, just like all the VeraLux scripts, have controls up top here to control this view, so we can zoom in, we can zoom out, we can do a fit to view, we can do a one-to-one view, and in this particular mode, if I hold my space bar down, I can hold my left mouse button down and I can pan around in the image. So we're going to go back to a fit view, and if you notice over here, there's a button that's called toggle stretch mode unchecked, which is the default. This is an unlinked stretch, which as you can see looks a little bit different, the image that we have loaded in Siril, and that's because Siril is actually linked. So if I wanted to match what I'm seeing in Siril more, I can link my view here, and now we've got the same linked view compared to what's actually loaded in Siril. So it doesn't matter the state that you have this in, it's just for this preview window that we're looking at in here. So again, just like all the other VeraLux scripts, this is very straightforward to use. There's really 90% of the time you're not going to have to do anything besides come in here and click auto calculate and then process. But let's talk about what the settings are and what they do. By default, use PSF auto masking is enabled, PSF meaning point spread function. This will detect the stars in your image, create a mask to protect them, as well as protect any faint nebulosity that may be in the image. Recommended that you leave that on, let it do its job, and then just hit auto calculate. Once auto calculate's complete, you can see it has set my signal rejection power to 63%, and it's also made adjustments to my membrane stiffness. The signal rejection power just determines how strong the model will ignore non-background structures. Non-background structures meaning the DSO within your image. So in my case, the Rosette Nebula. In between 30 and 70% is going to be a nice balanced area for you. Anything higher than 70%, it's going to be more protective, so it'll prioritize the signal preservation. And anything towards the left below, say around 30, is going to be more of an adaptive mode. It'll more closely follow the complex gradients in the image. So with the membrane stiffness, and one of the things that the script does is it treats the background as like a physical elastic surface. This is where the membrane stiffness comes in, and it'll control the tension of that background model surface. So more towards the left is for the vignette. As you move towards the right and you get up over 3, that tension will be more rigid for larger objects like nebula and such. But again, auto calculate 90% of the time will set these exactly where they need to be for you, and you shouldn't have to do anything else. So again, just to reiterate, auto PSF auto masking is on. Click auto calculate. When it's complete, just click process. You'll see it remove the gradients to the image loaded in Siril, and at this point you can be done, but you shouldn't be. And Ricardo, the developer, has called all of us out on this, myself included. We're so used to doing a background extraction, the gradients removed from our image, and then we just move on. And a lot of us don't even bother to look to see what the gradient looks like when it was removed. Maybe some of you do. I know that I don't. I'm usually happy with what the image looks like, and I assume that it's done a great job, and I move on. So he's trying to get us to change our habits, and he's not wrong. So if we come down to this button here with a little eyeball on it and click on it, there's our gradient that's been removed. And we should be looking at that to see exactly what the tool is doing, whether it's Nox or any of the other background extraction tools that we have. We should be reviewing the background gradients that it's removed. And what you want to look for is to make sure it's nice, gentle, even wash across your image. If you see any distinct structures, any hard edges, then that's an indication that the tool is probably removing signal along with the background gradient. And if you see something like that, that's where our masking comes in. So if I turn off the gradient model, I can actually mask out certain spots of the image to protect. So we have 2 ways of doing it. We have our paint tool, and I'm just going to scribble over this thing to show you guys how it works. We have our paint tool that I can just create a mask like that. Our brush size down here, obviously, if you want to go smaller, you can go smaller. If you want to go larger, you can go larger. The erase button does just the opposite, so I can come in and I can erase part of it. Maybe this was too much and I just want to make my brush a little bit smaller and kind of trim that back. You get the idea. And then the clear button clears everything. The lasso tool allows you to draw around your object to get that mask done for you. And again, I'm just going to clear that. So to give you kind of an example, this background model looks really good to me, but there is some red down here in the corner, and it may be an indication that it's taking some signal away from that faint nebulosity in the bottom left corner of the rosette. So what I can do is turn off my gradient model, and using either my lasso or my paint tool, I can paint in this corner to create a mask. And like I said, I can do that here, or I could do it in the gradient model. So I'm going to clear this just to show you. If I come over to the gradient model, I can, using the paint or the lasso tool, draw my mask. I'm just not going to see it as I'm drawing it, but I can get that initial line going around the area that I want to protect, and then turn off the gradient model, and I can see where I was drawing and then fill in the rest. So either way, you can either do it on the main image or you can do it on the gradient model. Get the mask in place and then click process. Before I click process though, I want to talk about what's happening here. I don't have to come back into Siril and hit undo. When the script runs, it actually caches the original image for us. So any changes that I make, whether it's a mask that I drew in or I made changes to the sliders up here, it's going to apply those to the cached image that it has, and then we'll see the results in Siril itself. So again, it just means I don't have to undo in between multiple iterations when I'm using the tool and clicking process. So again, mask in place, I'm going to click process. and now I've better protected that little corner. It's subtle. If I did come up into Siril and said undo and then redo, I do see a slight change down in the corner here. So again, that's probably a little bit OCD, but just to give you an example of how the masking works. Once I'm done, I can just hit clear. The other thing that I can do is if I want, if you click Save Gradient Model, then when you click Process, that gradient model will actually be saved in your working directory. So if I bring over my File Explorer, right here is the background model saved as a file for me in my working directory, so I have it to review later for whatever reason. So now at this point, background gradient was removed. I reviewed my model. I protected that corner a little bit with a mask. Now I'm done. Close the script, move on to the next step in your workflow. So as always, another fantastic script from Ricardo. Hope the video gives you a little bit better understanding of what's happening under the covers and how to use it, obviously. If you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comments. Before we go, I want to say thanks to all my members here on YouTube and on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate everybody's support. If you want to support the channel, there are a number of ways of doing it. Everything is linked in the description. You can either become a member, you can buy merchandise from my store, or if you make any purchases at all, I have affiliate links down in the description, and I get a little bit of a commission each time you guys use one of those links. So appreciate everybody's time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video, and clear skies.